Hi, I'm Roland, and welcome back to Practical Plastic. Got a full cup of tea, have a very cool kit to build, this Moebius Ford pickup truck, tow truck, and we are going to tear into this and do the full build today. So, last episode for the channel, I did the full open kit review. Today we're going to do the build. Before I do that, as always, just want to say thank you for watching, subscribing. Please do like, share, hit that alert button, all that good YouTube stuff. So let's dig into this box because it's a full box. Alrighty. Okay, so here we go. Now, since I did the separate episode with the full open kit, just gonna race through these sprues quickly because there is a bunch of them. So one thing I do want to show before taking a look at all the parts is to give you an idea of how much is in the box. Now, Moebius kits always stuff their boxes full. There's a lot in there. But this kit is the box is about a third deeper than on a normal or typical Moebius kit. So yeah, there is a lot to see, and here it is. Now, one thing to note, you do not get booklet style instructions. This is more of like an AMT fold out style instruction sheet. Do get two, one for the cab, chassis, engine, all of that, and then a second one for doing the tow truck wrecker part and with your paint guide. So, but still good Moebius instructions, clear diagrams, associated text to point out what you're doing, all your part numbers, everything is called out, laid out. So good job as usual. We have 6 tires with a really nice tread. I don't see any center seam on these, which is great, so just have to give it a little sand scuff to scuff up the treads. 6 of those, since it is a dually rear axle. They do supply you with chain and string for rigging up the wrecker part of the truck. We get a small but very serviceable set of decals here. Some nice callouts for different services, license plates, instrument gauge, engine detail, and the white striping for the wrecker. Good stuff. Now, I've separated the parts into several piles because there's a bunch of them. But we can start with the cab. You know, typical Moebius molds, nice and crisp, well detailed. You know, these are newer kits, so you expect that, but it's nice to see that it is there in execution. And we have some wheel backs. We have several sprues with engine parts. Round and round from sprue to sprue we go. And then we get into some of the new parts. Well, one of the new parts, this great wrecker grill. Gotta like that. Structural pieces, dashboard, wheel backs and whatnot. I mean, wheel inserts and whatnot. In this pile, we have basically the structural part of the truck. Door cards, yes, it is not a bathtub interior. It is a door card interior, and this is why I love that, because nice deep detail and mold relief on those door cards, so they will look great once they're detailed. Seat, nice prominent ribbing. So unless you're going to do the seat in black, you pick a color, you can do a wash in there, and that seat will look great. Floor pan, hood. Everything is molded nice and straight. There's no warping, which is wonderful to see. Which means we will be assembling and not fighting with it. Underbody pieces, some more pieces are for the wrecker assembly. Engine detail parts. More engine detail parts, transmission parts, shocks, all that good stuff. And then we have our axles. It's a four-wheel drive truck, so both differentials on both ends, leaf springs, drive shafts, and a nice one-piece frame. And again, looking at that, you can see there's no twist in that sprue. There's no warp, which means that should build up nice and straight and true right off the sprue. No twisting, no getting medieval with it, which is great to see. And then the parts for the specific parts for the wrecker assembly. You see the belts for dragging, lots of little tow hooks and whatnot. We have the sides of that wrecker body detailed with little doors, hooks, and more hooks, tie downs, you name it. Nothing's going anywhere on this guy. The boom and the pulley for the winch, which is up in here. Got a really nice diamond plate pattern on that bed. And these are the boxes for the access doors. So if you wanted to hog those out and put a hinge on them, you could actually have open service compartments, which is pretty cool. So that is all of that. Clear parts. It's a pickup, so you're not going to get a whole lot, but we do have all the assorted marker lights and whatnot. Don't want that to get scratched up. And then for our chrome, we do have chromed wheels. If you want to keep the chrome, they're really nice. They're really nicely molded, but the chrome is nice as well. But I will not be keeping my wheels in chrome because I will show you in a moment my plan is for this truck. We got chrome backings for a number of the lights, and then with a nice paper separator to protect them, we have our grille with cutout molded through, two sets of side mirrors, and all sorts of little detail pieces for the cab exterior. So a lot of stuff. Now what am I going to do with mine? Well, quite a few, well, not quite a few, but a number of episodes back, I built a great kit from Mini Art in 1/35th scale, an old Chevrolet wrecker truck from World War II vintage, which is this guy right here. Now, aside from the fact that when I saw this with the dual front wheels and everything, I just thought this was such a neat machine, but I was also inclined to buy it because in 24th scale, I had not seen any wrecker trucks, you know, with the tow and everything. However you want to call this guy. Until I saw this kit from Moebius. So, even though I built this at 1/35th, I just had to have the modern version in 24 scale. But when I ordered this, I was already thinking it would be really neat to build it up as a modern version of this truck in terms of color scheme. So I have the orange. I have this, I believe it's medium blue. Yes, medium blue. These are both Tamiya colors. So that's the way I'm going to paint up the truck. So the main body color will be the blue. The wrecker assembly back here, the tow truck frame and winch and all that stuff will be the orange. The wheels will be orange. This front crash bumper here, not 100% sure what I'm going to do with that. If I'm going to do it in orange or just do the black. But I am going to two-tone my body and have a white roof on there as contrast, which means I may be doing the front grille in white as well. That I have to figure out as I go through. But that is the plan. man. That's the plan. So I just thought that would be a neat thing to have, although they're different scales, have this, you know, late 19 or mid to late 1940s version of brute of a vehicle like this, and a more modern depiction of the vehicle. So this truck's grandson, even though they're different mates, Chevy to Ford. But anyway, so that's the plan. And because of that color selection, I will basically be airbrushing everything again as I did with the Revell bus. And I think that should work out pretty well. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. As always, you know, you never know until you do the build. So, going to get started with assembly, and I'll be right back with that. Alrighty. Alright, so let's get started. First thing, there were some mild seam lines on the cab. So, just a quick sanding to get those down, and then we can start cutting pieces. The frame, one piece, nice and level, sits true, so that's good news. For this part, I'm going to be using my trusty Testors plastic cement. You're going to see I'm going to bounce between a number of different glues in the process of this build. But for this part, because the Testors gives me a little working time, I like to use that here so that I can, as you see, clamp things and get them squared up, trued up, so I can have a little space to work with the parts and not have to fight against instant bonds as with a cyano glue or the Mr. Cement that I've been using, as I am using right here. Now here I'm not actually didn't use it for gluing. That was to smooth out the seam, which it does fairly well and saves me some sanding. It's not perfect, but since this is going to be sprayed all black, it hides it just fine enough. Now here, this was a steering link piece that was unfortunately broken and right on that slender arm, but by gluing each piece in individually, I can then true up those broken ends, and with the dab of glue that I put on there, just get them maneuvered together, tweezers to the rescue, and let that sit, and there you go. And again, with the black overcoat of paint, it's not even going to be noticed. And here, linking up the drivetrain, and as you can already see, what I would call reliably Moebius. I don't want to see typically because I haven't done that many Moebius kits, but nicely detailed, things going together well. And there's our nice four-wheel drive chassis. Now here's the snow report that I like to do, and as you can see, very little, which is great news because that makes the whole process simpler. So now I'll get into building up the engine. As you can see, there is no paint anywhere yet. This is all pre-paint assembly. These are parts I just assume put them together now and not have to deal with blatant nub marks and separation lines that you would have painting them first and then assembling them. And doing some more engine detail. The engine it's beautifully detailed. Again, what I would say, expected of Moebius. Now here working on the wrecker bed, it is a multi-piece unit, as you can see here, but everything is tabbed and keyed, and it just went together really well, which whenever running into these multi-panel body assemblies, there's always a concern if it'll go together true, and this went together no problem. Something that I found over the course of the kit, and you can see there, I pretty much had to press those pieces together. It's almost like puzzle pieces or Lego bricks, things that are tabbed and pinned. They are secure fits. There's no wobble. There's no vagueness. So they go together, and there's only one way they're going to go together, and they go together true. Now here, we're going to work with the assembly for the wrecker boom, and just getting that together. So I'm working on the wrecker boom here, and because I obviously have to paint this, I looked at the assembly order here and trying to do things. You can see I've got some pre-assembly engine, the wrecker bed, the frame and whatnot. But with and this is the support frame. So the boom will attach to this, and off you go towing. So this part of the frame, no problem, assembled, I can go into paint. But with the boom, the way this goes together, this will fit roughly like so. And this piece, this little doodad, fits in over the center boom to basically keep that in place. Now, the way they describe the assembly is you mount these two brackets between the arms, and then you slide the boom in through here. Now, the problem is this is very tight, and I was concerned if I assembled it that way, when I slide the boom in, it's going to scrape off a whole bunch of the paint, and then I'm going to have a mess. So what I've done is I've attached the bottom plate on there. So now when it comes time to, when I'm done painting, I can fix this top plate on there, like so, and then attach the two sides of the boom. Boom, boom. And there we go. And that'll go together. The other thing is, which was a little fiddly, this upper pulley here has to be able to move so that later the cable can go through and we can rig it up. But it's only held on by this little cover plate here, so that is sort of a delicate gluing job so that you don't seize this. So take care with that. And then the other thing, which was a little weird, at the end of the two wrecker boom arms are these cleats, and in the instructions they just say, to glue them on there, but it's not real clear. If you notice, there is some geometry here, because we have the wrecker boom, and then the cleat comes off at an angle, because remember, this, when it's attached to the frame, has to be angled like so to attach to, where'd they go? There they go. To attach to these two pivot points, like so. Now, if you don't glue these cleats on the right way, you're not going to have that geometry correct, and then they are not going to sit in their receivers here, and your boom is going to be a mess. So I think they should have had a little close-up in the instructions showing how those attach, because, as I said, you can see it's just, glue this into that. And not really stressing, and in the text as well, they don't really stress how this geometry works here. So, as usual, study the instructions. Because I did study this quite a bit before assembling it, because whenever I'm building something, just as a general note, where there are lots of different angles coming together, I like to do a lot of test fitting to make sure I'm lining these parts up correctly to get that geometry to work. Something like this, last thing you want to do is, do all your painting and whatnot, and then put this thing together and realize, oh, I put them in the wrong way, and now I got to snap them out. They are delicate little pieces, so that would not be fun. However, good job, Moebius, because they do give you extras for these parts. So if you do make a mistake and you do have to take them out and replace them, you do have a spare for each one, and that's cool. So now, something I haven't done before is dechroming parts, and because all of these items I do not want in chrome, I will be painting them, I figured let me dechrome them first. So as you see, I used that purple power and letting these sit overnight. Chrome was gone, and just had to scrub them with some water. I have to say they still felt a little slimy afterwards from the cleaner, so I did soap them and clean them up, and now they're ready for prime, gray and black. And here, black for the wheels, gray for the parts that will later be painted white. And now we are full into painting. So here is some masking work. Because I am going to be airbrushing 2 different colors on these parts, this will be masking and counter masking. Everything, as you can see, has been sprayed with Tamiya surface primer. Now here I tried a little experiment. Normally when I do seats, I do panel liner after painting to bring out the seat detail. But here I figured, well, let me try before airbrushing to put the panel liner in and see how that works, which we'll see momentarily. So here we go with the white for the roof and the grille, side mirrors. And as always with airbrushing, any kind of painting, multiple light coats are better than one heavy coat. Now here, using this buff color to airbrush over these parts that I pre-treated with the panel liner, and it didn't work so great on the doors, but on the seat where I really bombed it in there, I think that worked great. So something to learn for the future, or to remember for the future. Now here, removing the first layer of masking, and I will go back now and counter mask so that I can paint the rest of the body color. Now, all the airbrushing you see here, I'm only showing one coat going on, but all the colors, 2 coats, and I did a 3rd coat for the orange. The buff went on with 1 coat and it was good. Now you may wonder, why did I bother masking for the first colors that I did? And that's because I didn't want those colors over the gray primer, which when I paint the final color would then affect the tone of that color. Your finished color will always be affected by the color underneath it, which is why primer is typically gray, nice neutral color. So if I had buff and white overspray on the door cards and the cab respectively, that would have affected the hue of the blue. Even with 2 coats, there would have been a risk of that, and I didn't want that, so mask, counter mask. And here, just putting down a first coat on all these different panels for the body, the bed, which had been assembled. Getting into all the little nooks and crannies there. First coat doesn't have to be perfect. Just want to get general coverage. And then with a subsequent coat or coats, you can make sure that you have full coverage. And I just love using these Tamiya acrylics for the airbrushing. They make life so simple. The cleanup is nice and easy because they're not oil-based, so there's no stink, there's no fumes. I can do it in my basement. And now removing the mask, and looks like I did a pretty decent job. It's not perfect, but that's the other nice part with the acrylics. Anything that is deficient, I can just go in there with a little detail brushwork, and I know I will have color match. So now using a plain gloss blue for the engine, and now just knocked a hole in a cardboard to make a little mount so I could paint all around the engine. So simple is simple. And moving to the Tamiya orange for the wheels and the wrecker assembly. Now you see I have black primer for the wheels, gray for the wrecker parts, because I want the wheels a little bit darker since they're the wheels and they're going to be getting all mucked up. As well as the front crash bumper, which I will also be painting the bottom part. And here we go. Okay, so with painting done, airbrushing that is, I just did a very rough layup / mock-up here, just to see how this was going to shape up with this color scheme that I'm trying to translate from the mini art truck I did in 135th. And this typically is not something I do, laying up something like this after the painting, but better to check it now than build it and later decide, you know, not too crazy about it. So yeah, I think this should work out pretty well. So now it's detailing time. So I'm going to start with this black panel liner to bring out the gaps in the door frame. And you can see I got a little messy there, but no need. I'll show how I correct that. For here, the seam was very shallow, so I used a Gundam marker. So it's always good to have a few ways to do something, because you never know what kind of situation you're going to run into. And now here, using a little bit of a heftier marker to go in and do the vent slats on the body. And now moving to an even thicker marker in the Sharpie to do the trim line around those door card inserts. So that makes that nice and tidy. And doing a little detail painting here for the cranks. They could have done those separately in chrome parts, but I just assume have them molded on there. The relief was pretty sharp, so it was easy to paint. And now doing some detail painting on the pulleys and for the backs of what will be the tail lights. Now here, correcting the mess I made. And there's another reason why I love these Tamiya acrylics. Just using the brush, this is almost like a dry brush technique, just dithering in the paint where I got sloppy with the panel liner. And of course there are other methods and techniques to do this stuff. This is just the way I do it. Again, I find it very simple, and you know, I love the simple. Now bringing in some more detail colors for the floor mat and whatnot, and now we can start assembling. Alrighty. So I figured I'd start with the interior. No particular reason. It's just what I had mostly ready to go in front of me. So I started there. I jumped all over the place while doing this kit. I don't know why. I was building a little chaotically, but whatever. It is what it is. Now here, I figured in this build, I'd show a little bit more how I detail up a dashboard. So first I did a semi-gloss black. Then I went in with my fine brush with some panel liner to bring up the outline for the glove box and what I assume is the ashtray. Now, since I am not using the decal for the instrument cluster, you can see I have the decal on my desk there and using that as a model as to how to paint the cluster. Now, a little flat white to bring up some detail. This is working with some detail painting here. All colors I had on my little shelf of paints, and just moving from color to color to try to bring some of this detail to life. The control pedals will barely be seen once the construction is done, but why not give them a little work. Here, doing a little dry brush to bring out this little ring detail in the middle of the steering wheel. And the real truck, I doubt those were like a metallic silver, but to highlight it. Here, back to the dashboard, and almost doing like a dry brush, very little paint on the brush, and just massaging the paint across the raised detail. And there's a comparison between the decal and what I was able to recreate with paint. Now using the silver to bring out some more detail. And here using the silver as actually a base coat because I want that cluster surround in white. So the silver makes the white pronounced in just one coat, and then it is done. So now with all these parts glued, we can put them together. This is the brake assembly. Moebius has this interesting system where they give you a plate and you glue in the pedals that you need into receivers. So rather than having two different pieces with a brake layout, you just use the pedals that you need. So different approach, pretty neat. And there we go. I think that dashboard is looking pretty good. Of course, that's thanks to the molding detail, which was great. That kind of work is significantly more difficult when you do not have pronounced molding and the detail is not crisp. Now for the roof lights, the roof marker lights, they are marked inside the cab, but they do need to be drilled out. So a little hand drill work, a little X-Acto cleanup to clean up the top of the cab, and they are ready to go. Firewall, no problem. They give a nice chrome trim piece for the hood, the front lip of the hood. If you were doing, let's say, less of a utility type build, that would be a nice detail piece to have in there. I am not going that route, so I glued the piece in, but then I painted it blue to match the rest of the truck. And these pieces, they, again, almost like Lego, they snap in nice and secure. I just put little dabs of glue on the pegs, attachment pegs from underneath to hold them secure. Now they do give you silver letter decals to go over the molding of the Ford letters on the hood, but since I am doing the white utility paint scheme, I figured I'd go in and brush in over the raised detail of the letters. So it's delicate work, but nothing too complicated or task demanding. So I went ahead. Now moving over to the wrecker boom. And as I said, you can see I'm bouncing quite a bit, working on the cab, working on the boom, working on the interior. Although it seems somewhat random, I was building around what I had to do in terms of painting. So since I realized what I wanted to do in terms of the detail painting for these assemblies, I tackled those first. and I set aside the chassis and the engine, and sometimes it's nice to mix things up. Now here, this is the string they give you for the rigging. In the kit, in the bag that it comes in, it's all folded up. But I know from my days sewing costumes for my kids, you take thread and you pull it through your fingers. As it heats up, running between your fingers, those kinks come right out. So now that that's ready, I can dry fit the boom assembly so that I can glue that support frame to the main box frame and know that it is true. This is going to be the winch. Nice assortment of parts to give it some great detail. But this too, you'll see me dry fit that into the box frame for the boom so that I know the support legs are positioned correctly to key into their locators. Now the kit does provide parts for everything on this boom to be workable and positionable, but those parts are all rather delicate. I, for one, was not interested in playing with my boom, so I'm gluing everything static. Now here, getting that rigging line in place, you saw how I pulled it through and measured it to cut, feeding it over the pulleys and tacking it in place with cyano so that rigging will not move. And there we go. You could play the violin on those strings. Now, some flat aluminum to detail up the winch drum. So now that that painting is done, I can attach it. And now some cyano, and I can start putting in place the line for the actual tow cable. So I wrapped it around the drum quite a few times to give it a look of a winch. It would have winding. And then over the top pulley, tack glued with cyano. And now that that's all done, I can attach to the bed permanently. Now some decaling. This kit doesn't come with very many decals, but they certainly do the trick to convey the nature of the vehicle. It would have been nice, like in an AMT kit, if they gave you different themes for the towing service contractor, but they give you one in this, and you know it's fine. Now this white striping decal for the back bumper, that comes as one big decal. I sectioned it so I didn't have to try fitting it around the lights and assemblies and whatnot. And then I have this sheet of generic warning labels for Gundams, but they work just fine with something like this. The license plate decals are just decals that you stick on, so I figured that's going to look silly, so I made two placards just out of sheet styrene, cut them out, painted them flat black. Decals go on, and now it looks like they are actual plates on the vehicle. This final assembly for the wrecker I did in stages using the cyano to mount the pieces one by one. It was very delicate. It is very delicate. And then putting the line to the hook, I wrapped it around the hook to make sure I had a secure connection, and it is done. Once everything's dry, I'll hit everything with this flat clear. That'll seal in the decals, give the same reflective or lack of on the paint, and even it all out, as I think a construction vehicle would be. You know, I don't like to do big weathering and wear and tear on my builds, and for this being a utility vehicle, I was just looking for not having it look, you know, glammed up in any way with a nice shine on it or anything like that. They've been watching the further assembly of the chassis. I did a little very rudimentary sponge painting to get a rust speckle pattern on the exhaust system. More detail pieces for the engine. And now assembled with all its detail painting, you can see just how nice representation of that engine Moebius pulled off for this kit. Now back to some panel liner. I love doing panel liner on drive shafts, brings out the detail. What I'm pointing to here, the engine brackets are too long, so I had to chop them off to shorten them so that the engine would sit down in the frame as it needs to. As always, test fit, test fit. And with that done, I can now mount the engine, and it pops in there nice and secure. Use the tweezers to get the exhaust system pins in place, and that is done. Radiator can go on, and with the radiator in place, I can now attach the radiator hoses. Top hose, no problem. This bottom hose, it gave me a fight, but after a lot of futzing and playing with the tweezers, finally got it in place. The clear parts on this kit, mixed bag. The windshield and back window, super tight, in place, no problem. Those side windows, they had big ledges, and I figured they would go in there nice and easy, and they were a headache of headaches. They didn't seat right, and what a pain, but in they went. Now building up the wheels, I did sand my tire tread to give that a little look of wear. The dually wheels in the back, that's the inner wheel, and then it glues with a keyed pin to the outer wheel, and then it has a pin that reaches through the outer wheel, which is secured by the big central nut, and then they glue onto the shaft. You cannot build this kit with turning wheels. They are cement on only, which means it will be static, and as it sits, all four wheels are touching. Happy day. Now here with the chrome, I didn't want it bright as the original chrome, so this is a trick I learned when I did the Chevy Nova SS. Stumble on it by accident. I clear coated the chrome with Tamiya clear flat, and then went over with the black panel liner. Now here for these marker lights on the bed, do need to drill those out to locate those. And those lights, the way I treated those, I did turn signal amber on the back, and then a layer of Testors metallic silver over them. Tail lights are in, and it's time to mount our wrecker bed. Very exciting. And there we go. And same thing, it's keyed. There's no doubt as to where the frame locates in there. This is joining the drive chain and drive shaft to the power output of the transfer case. This was a very fiddly thing to assemble, but it does locate properly. It's just small pieces, and you kind of have to put several things together at once. So tweezers, patience, but it does go together well. What's the utility vehicle without big giant mud flaps in the back? Those 4 decals were from the decal sheet. Finally attaching the hazard light up top. The dome was a clear part. I just painted 1 coat of turn signal amber on the inside to give it that amber or yellowish tint. Now mounting the cab, again, positive locators, no doubt as to where it goes. On goes that apocalyptic wrecker bumper. I think that's looking good. So now, as you can see, it's pretty much done. At this point, I'm going to pull out. You'll see there are just a few small odds and ends detail parts for the heater lines for the engine, door handles, windshield wipers, whatnot, and then it will be all done. So yes, thumbs up, happy thumb dance. There we go. So next up will be final reveal. Okay, here we go. Final build reveal for the Moebius 1972 Ford F350 4x4 tow truck. And there we go. Now, of course, you've seen me in the process of building it, so not too much of a surprise, but now with the little detail pieces on and whatnot, we are all done. The only thing I really did that may be a little bit more noticeable, adding these chain hooks and using the chain in the kit, and I'll bring the model closer in a little bit to show that off. But first things first. So, impressions of the kit. One, lots of extra parts, and that is great. Particularly, and for this kit, this is particularly important, but particularly 3 times, is they give you a number of extra parts involving the boom assembly and the tow hooks back here and whatnot. These pieces are fragile. They assemble in a somewhat finicky manner. So if you are not used to working with things that small, it is very easy to damage or, outright break them. So having those extras, I think, is really great, and thumbs up to Moebius for that. Impression 2, finding parts. Now, I have shown in other build videos where instructions include a sprue map and they show you the layout of the parts with their numbers. I don't often refer to the sprue map, but the sprue map is always nice to have as a reference. It would have been great here. Now, Moebius has repurposed this truck kit, the basics of this Ford pickup truck, God knows how many times. So this is yet another refit of that kit. So it's great that they give you not just spare parts for the boom assembly, but overall in the kit you end up with a significant amount of extras. But when you go to assemble things, parts are scattered around the sprues, and sometimes you are looking and looking to find things, and that can be a little annoying. So in the future, it would be nice if Moebius did include a sprue map in their instructions, but it's a little point, it's a nitpicky point. The instructions overall were good. The only thing that I noted as could have been a little bit better was attaching how to attach those cleats for the wrecker boom to make sure you have that geometry correct. That would have been helpful, but otherwise the instructions are, they're clear, and they show you how to put everything together. My only gripe with the instructions is that they are in this, fold out format, which I really do not like. I would much rather prefer to have a booklet style. When you are building and painting, there's a lot of jumping around through the instructions, and when you have one of these fold out instructions, it's like an exercise in origami, and after a while it again, personal thing, but it gets on my nerves. So I'd rather just have a booklet where I can flip back and forth to the steps that I want to look at without having to rearrange the whole thing. So that brings us to part fit. I mentioned during the build montage that the part location and fitment is very good, and I have to say, as a final, I stick to that. Some of these pieces, as I had said before, it's almost Lego-like. They come together, they almost snap together, and that's great because you don't have a vagueness as to where things go. You know, sometimes kits with older tooling, less clear instructions, you're doing a little guesswork as to where to locate things. Not so with this. Everything goes on, and that's great. To an extent, putting in this windshield, I was a little prepared for that because I have seen some other builders and channels do reviews of Moebius kits based on this Ford, and about the incredibly tight fit of that front windshield. And I was, even with that as a known, I was still surprised how tight it was getting that in there, and I was concerned I was gonna snap the windshield. But you have to push it in from the inside, and I mean, you're pushing to get that thing in place. That said, once it's in place, it's not going anywhere, so I didn't bother with any glue on it. The rear window, I mentioned previously, tight fit, but seats securely. The two side vent windows, again, as I had said before, gave me an absolute headache. They just do not want to locate properly and whatever. Concerning the rest of the kit, I think maybe that's why that sort of hit me as annoying, because everything else went together so well. But it's not a tragedy. It's just a matter of the side vent windows, meaning on the triangles of the door here. The fit is so sloppy, and even with them glued in place, they seem to want to pivot a bit, and you see in mine they're a little angled forward, which what can I do about it? It is what it is. It's you kind of have to look at it to notice it, so I'm not going to worry about it. But you know, when you have the kit in front of you and you're building it and it's right in your face, it's pretty obvious that it's not quite right. As I said, some of the parts are fragile. That's just a matter of, you know, particularly with the boom again, taking care with the kit and knowing how to handle your parts. That's an experience thing, and if you've built a few kits, especially some 1/35th scale kits, you'll recognize that these small parts are delicate and they need to be handled appropriately, but you have spares, so again, not a big deal. The only thing I found a little surprising were the motor mounts, and I had pointed out in the montage that they were too long. As always, test fit, and I just cut them. It wasn't a precise cut. I just cut them enough so that the engine could sit down with its locator pins into the frame, and you really don't even see where those motor mounts touch the side of the engine block, so you know, who cares? It's done, and that's it. So that wraps up the overall impression. Now, as far as a kit for building, it's a great build. It's a Moebius kit. I expected it to be a good build, and I was not disappointed in any manner with that. Appropriateness for beginners in the hobby, I really think you should have even just one or two 25th scale kits under your belt, or 35th scale kits under your belt, before you jump into this. Depending, I should say, caveat, depending on how much you want to go with the wrecker assembly. Now, I did do the rigging. If you're not comfortable doing the rigging, you can build it without the rigging and it will still look great. So you know, you have a little moderation there, but even without that, there are some small pieces in here, making sure you get the geometry right. That takes a little bit of care, and like I said, if you have even one or two kits under your belt, I think you can use that as a stepping stone to doing more complicated things. And because it does actually go together very well, this kit would be a great doorway to stepping up into things that are a little more complex and that require a little bit more experience in terms of planning your build and test fitting and understanding how things go together. So that's that. Now, just gonna pop the hood off and turn off the turntable here so we can take a little bit of a closer look at things. And we have in here this wonderful engine compartment, very nice detail in there. Now, obviously it's painted, but you know, you need that detail in the build to really make it work with the paint, and Moebius certainly provides that. So again, thumbs up to them. We have the nice interior. I showed how I did that dashboard, and you can see it in there. You know, with most kits, once the dashboard is in, you're really not getting direct light on it, so it doesn't have to be perfect, but getting what you can out of it is always a good deal. Underbody, I did do, or I spread black wash all over the underside of the body just to separate it in color from top side, so it doesn't just look like a you know, paint by number deal. But very nicely detailed. I love having all the drive mechanisms that you can see how the engine comes in and out to the drive axles, especially with the power takeoff with the little shaft going to the motor to drive the chain for the winch assembly up top. That was nicely detailed, finicky to assemble, but nicely detailed. And then in terms of extras, the only thing I really did extra was adding these warning decals, which I got from an aftermarket set of Gundam decals for generic warning signs, and I put one down there on the winch as well. And I think it just adds that, you know, a little bit of something extra to individualize the build, and I think they look cool. I mean, to me, when you have, you know, industrial or, you know, really functional type vehicles with, you know, machinery, this stuff always has placards and warning labels and don't touch this and you'll lose a leg if you do that, and you know, that kind of stuff. So I just think it brings a little more to it having those on there. Post build, I did play with the chain that comes with the kit, and they give you a number of these tow hooks, smaller ones and bigger ones. So I did use the chain, and I didn't even try to capture on video cutting the chain links, open them up and pressing them through the hole in the hook, because it's, you know, niddly little fiddly work with tweezers and everything. But got it in there, painted the chain a steel color, and then just tack glued the hooks in the positions I wanted with cyano, and tack glued the chain to the wrecker bed again with the cyano to hold that in place. And that too, I think, just adds that little bit extra. And to step back to the beginning of all this, I did mention that what I really wanted to do with the paint scheme was have a 24 scale modern truck with the paint scheme I did for this World War II era 135th Chevrolet truck from Mini Art, and I think that translated pretty well. I'm really happy seeing them next to each other like this. I think that's a nice thing to have on my shelf. And again, you know, as you start to build your kits, or you've been building kits and you have a number of finished products, you know, you may look at what you did on one kit and try to translate it to another. And I don't think that's a lack of creativity. I think that's just expression of what you want to do and how you envision the kit to go. And hey, if it's what you want to do, what's wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with that. So it's all good. As long as you're enjoying what you're doing, paint it purple, who cares? You know, it's your build. You build it the way you want. The idea is to have fun and play with it and get what you can out of it. That's the point of the hobby. So the only thing I will mention that I would like to redo on this, you may have noticed when the truck was going around, I have a little bit of gray fogging behind these decals for the 24-hour emergency towing. I'm not sure what happened there. I'm sure it's something I did because I thought I followed the same steps I do for handling my decals on everything else I do, and all the other decals are fine, but these two do not. So if anybody knows what would make a decal have that like gray haze behind it under certain lighting, please let me know down in the comments. And you know, I'd like to learn and find out what I did wrong, and hopefully avoid it from happening again. And it's a minor thing. I had noticed it when I was finishing up the kit, you know, moving it around and light catching it different ways, and realized, that's odd. I don't understand where that came from, but it's done, and that's that, and I'm not going to bother with it anymore. It is set. So that said, I'll wrap this one up. You may notice I am as you hear from my dog barking at the fence. So I'm actually outside on my deck filming this because I had another little flood in my basement. The only thing better than one basement flood are two basement floods. Yeah, whatever. But this one isn't nearly as bad as the first one that I had. So this is just a temporary relocation, and in a few days I should be able to be back at my table. So yeah, ambient lighting on a toasty, nice summer day. Not a bad combination, actually. All right, so that's it for this one. So gonna wrap this up. See you with the next build, and as always, enjoy your hobby. Thank you for watching.